Okay, the solar cell has a problem that it has a very little amount of electrical energy available to us. 0.7 watt is the power that is available from a single cell, which is not sufficient. So what we do is we put lots of them in series together to make something called a solar panel. These are large extended black objects that you see from attached to a satellite, and from which the solar energy is utilized for the satellite. So these panels are very useful. You would see it on the top of some flats also. I've seen them in Hyderabad. Most of the houses have these panels stretched out on the rooftops to collect the solar energy and to convert it into electrical energy. And therefore these panels are very useful, though it has some advantages. So what are the advantages of these solar energy advantages? The first advantage, of course, is that it is very long lasting. As long as the sun is there, we can use the solar energy very conveniently. It has these panels have no moving parts. Moving parts require more maintenance and they are not that durable. So if it doesn't have it has no moving parts, then that is the advantage, that we don't have to worry about this thing, and therefore the maintenance is less maintenance. In fact, apart from the initial costing and initial work, the maintenance is minimal. Hardly anything ever happens to these things. So maintenance is less. And there is no focusing device which is required. No focusing device required. If you recall, in a solar cooker, which we can even make at home, we very often use concave mirrors to focus the solar light, the sunlight, to a particular point where we can place a pressure cooker. So the rays are concentrated, the heat is concentrated, and the efficiency high. No such thing is required here. That is one advantage. And lastly, a very big advantage is that it can be used in remote places, or the places which are difficult to reach places, right, that is where we cannot take the electrical lines, and other sources also are not possible to produce energy. So that is where we once install these solar panels, and after that it takes care of the electrical requirement, the energy requirement for a long time. So these are the advantages, though there are some disadvantages also. Okay, so let's what can you think of? What are the disadvantages? Okay, the disadvantage first is that silicon that we use in these panels, though it is plentiful, it's available very easily, the special purity and special grade silicon is difficult to manufacture. So therefore its entire process is very expensive to make the special grade silicon. Silicon is a part of silicon oxide, which is sand, silica. Okay, so it is available, except that we need to purify it. We have to make it a special grade, which is not very inexpensive, right? We also use silver. Silver is nowhere cheap. Okay, so silver also is expensive, and therefore it has a very high cost. One more important thing also is that its efficiency is low. So you cannot produce a large amount of electrical energy from our resources. So these are the limitations, disadvantages, and therefore we need to work on this issue a little more. Technologically, we need to work on it. And the uses, it has still very many uses. One I pointed out to you, artificial satellites. Right? How do you produce electricity up in the sky? So very difficult. It is only the solar light which is so easily available. So satellites, you would see some toys, okay, or you would have probably used some calculators. which use these. You would see a small strip, on which if you can even throw a tube light, a focus tube light or a lamp, now, of course, the solar light, you would see that these produce electrical energy which is utilized in the device itself. So that is one thing. Then you have the radio stations or the TV stations, TV or radio stations which are far away, right? In remote places, they use this kind of energy, this type of energy. We also have traffic signals, which use traffic signals are on the roads, and nearby roads we cannot have a large infrastructure which would create some kind of which will transform some kind of energy into electrical energy, and therefore these are the easiest for the traffic lights. Also, traffic lights are traffic signals. So this is useful for the signal signals, and also we use for domestic use. As I said, I've seen it myself, domestic use on the rooftops. These panels are. So they have a large amount of utility despite being inefficient, despite being expensive. It's a very, very useful kind of energy resource. Let's now go to the next source of energy, the sea. You would see that the sun plays an important role even in this kind of energy. So if we discuss the solar energy, now we are discussing energy from the sea. Energy from the sea. This has many types. The first one is called tidal energy. You would have heard of low tide and high tide. Right? What are they? Right? A lot of water comes in and comes inside the land, and in the high tide and then low tide the water goes back. Why does this happen? It happens because the gravitational pull of objects near Earth. Now the object which is quite near and exerts a appreciable amount of gravitational pull is the moon. So it is the moon's pull which causes the water to go in a particular direction and then reverse its movement. So because of this, high tide and low tide, the water movement takes place, and if this kinetic energy of water is utilized in conversion to electrical energy, we would call it tidal energy. What we do is that we find out a small exit of the sea water, and as the waves come in, the water has a high velocity in this smaller area, and when it goes back in this direction. So when it comes in, it has a high velocity, and that high velocity or high kinetic energy ultimately can be converted to move into electrical energy by supplying that energy to the, as you had seen earlier, to the shaft of the dynamo. So electrical energy can be converted if the water outlet from the sea is a thin, narrow door kind of thing. See, some exit. So this is what we do. We can use this. It has advantage, of course. Advantage, easy availability when in the nearby places, near to the sea, naturally, near to the sea, right? It is not costly, but the mechanical part of it gets little difficult, in the sense that the disadvantage, I would say, disadvantages are that it is highly localized, meaning highly localized, always near the sea. Secondly, it's the problem is that if you have the mechanics of it, the infrastructure or the arrangements of the machines, etc., that gets expensive. So expensive machines to utilize this. So these are the disadvantages, and just because of this, we naturally, it is limited to the amount of kinetic energy of waves, of the tides, may be limited. If the kinetic energy is not high, that means the tides are not strong, or we don't have an opportunity to have a narrow exit from the sea, then of course, even though the tides are there, that energy cannot be used. So it has its limitations, and it has not been used very often in our life till now. So this is tidal energy.